If you told me a year ago that we would be having conversations about trading the Rasmus Andersson, I would have called you crazy. But here we are.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. As always, I am your host, Jess Belmosto, and thank you so much for joining me today. Now, through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today, we are going to be entering the rabbit hole of a Rasmus Andersson trade over these next 2 years. Does it happen this season? Does it exist? Is there a world where this can happen? What kind of message does it send? And what might you get for him? But let's dive into this and make sure you are subscribed to Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We are here for you through the off season, and we'll be back to daily podcasting before you know it for the preseason and regular season. If you told me a year ago that we would be having this conversation, I would not entertain this. I would say this is right up there with like the Jacob Markstrom trade rumors at the start. It felt like unbelievable. At least for me personally, I am someone that likes to live in, I don't want to call it delusion, but hockey fan delusion, where I think anything is like, it's all fine and dandy. Everything will all work out. But as we have witnessed with the Calgary Flames, that is not how it typically goes here. So why would you trade Rasmus Andersson? Well, he's coming up on 28 years old. He has 2 years left on his contract, and he'll be 28 when it expires. And that's, as I say, as a 28-year-old, that's old. That's old in hockey. And you aren't looking to lock up a player at that age long term. And why aren't we doing that, class? Because we already have old players that are on long-term contracts. And that's not, to discredit Rasmus Andersson. I think Rasmus Andersson is an excellent defenseman. I think especially if he kind of finds his groove again this year, you're looking at a very good defenseman. And I want to see him where he was 2 seasons ago, prior to his car accident. Or not, it wasn't even, it was a motor vehicle accident. He was hit. But you aren't trying to win right now. You are trying to build a winning team. You are building to that point. And Rasmus Andersson is not necessarily a spring chicken like we have established, right? I don't think there is a Flames prospect, like defensive prospect at this very moment, that is ready to make the jump to the NHL full time. I could be wrong. I said this time last year, I was talking about Connor Zary and Martin Pospisil both needing at least another year, maybe 2 for Pospisil in the AHL. And I was very wrong. And I will happily own that. But with this, I do feel like the Flames' defensive core pipeline, it is a lot more shallow than the forwards. Obviously, you're gonna have more forwards, but I feel like there's a decent gap talent-wise there. And I do feel like Jeremy Poirier will be an NHL defenseman. It is just a matter of when and where. Last year, he was supposed to make his jump. Didn't happen. But back to Rasmus Andersson. Like, this team is looking to get younger, right? I say we as if we are in this conference room with Craig Conroy. But the Flames aren't looking to continue to sign these older players to long-term deals. And that is fair. That is a very fair assessment. And I don't necessarily think that it needs to be, judged or argued against, I guess would be the right words I'm looking for here. But you don't necessarily have a prospect that is ready to like launch themselves into the NHL. You also have a rookie goaltender in the net who is going to require some help, right? And you want a guy like Rasmus Andersson in front of your next generational goalie. I think that makes the most sense. But what if there is a scenario where there is a prospect that just comes leaps and bounds and comes out of the blue or is ready to graduate to the NHL and does it successfully? There is a world where Hunter Brustowicz just absolutely kills it in the whether he's an overager or if he goes to the AHL. Like, there is a possibility for anything. Like, you can't just limit yourself to thinking these are the current Flames defensemen, these are the Flames prospects, like, ready to make the jump. Like, anything can happen. And I think it's important to keep an open mind with that. I'm not necessarily going to say I'm for trading Rasmus Andersson, because we're going to talk about why coming up next. But I'm interested in exploring what everyone else thinks, because just like with the Jacob Markstrom trade, I was able to get behind it eventually, because it was going to benefit the team, and it did benefit the team. Get a little bit of cap relief, got a young player, we ball. And coming up next, we are going to talk about, is this the right message to send when you are looking to trade a homegrown player that has truly overcome the odds and worked his behind off to get here? And we will be back right after this. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We have something a little different for you today. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. And I know that I will be rooting for my Dallas Cowboys from the comfort of my couch in New York with NFL Sunday Ticket. And all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames and for making Locked On Flames a part of your day. I appreciate it. With this transitional period for the Flames, we have been looking at it like we want the Flames to get better, and we want them to do it right. We want them to not live in a 10-year playoff drought. We don't want Buffalo. We don't want to be Buffalo. And I think that's fair. You don't want to be the Ottawa Senators. That's fair. And you have to make the right moves in order to make that happen. And I think it also involves morale, which we talked a little bit about last week. And we know that hockey can sometimes not be fun for these players. Not necessarily like this team specifically, but there have been players that have come forward after, leaving a team after like a tough year or tough coaching playing under a tough coach or whatever the case may be, saying like hockey wasn't fun. I had to convince myself that hockey was fun. Look at Mitch Marner. Happened a few years ago now, like probably closer to 6, I think at this point. But it comes down to sending a message too, right? Like, what message did it send to trade, these well-respected veterans last year? You trade Toffoli, you trade Chris Tanev, you trade Jacob Markstrom. You're just selling players off like hotcakes. And it is a business, 100% a business. And I fully understand and respect that. But this is a different scenario here. Rasmus Andersson was drafted by the Flames. He came up through the Flames system. Ryan Huska was his AHL coach, and they they battled it out. Rasmus Andersson was a lazy, out of shape 18-year-old coming into the league, and Ryan Huska got his butt into gear. And that is a player who, didn't necessarily come into the league in the best shape and had instant domination. He had to work for that. And I think that's, where a lot of these players are not necessarily like out of shape part, but the having to work and build that skill level. And I think that's, it's important to play in an organization that values and respects that, and really cherishes and nurtures. And a lot of the young guys now on this Flames team are homegrown players. And what kind of message does it send to trade a guy that you developed, that brought a lot to your organization, was just in the discussion for captaincy 2 summers, was not 2 summers ago, it was last summer. What message does that send to players like a Pospisil, like a Zari, like a Coronado, a Wolf? Like, oh, you've hit 28, we're done, see you later. Like think about it that way, right? And Rasmus Andersson is someone that a lot of teams would love to have. He is a great defenseman, pretty solid on the power play. And I just really have to wonder, like, okay, your hard work and dedication only goes so far. But is this a scenario where, you talk to the player and it's like, hey, we'll give you a 4-year deal and we're not doing 7. 6 is pushing it, not 5. So 4. Is that something they explore? Because, does Rasmus Andersson, like, what does he want? Like, that's the other thing. That's the other part in all of this, right? Does he want to be traded? Does he want a chance to go compete with a team? Like, I think everyone is kind of strapped for cash at the moment, but like, if a Toronto made it happen, could he go back and play with Chris Tanev? Is there a scenario where Pittsburgh or the Capitals, like, I'm just thinking of random teams out east that can compete. Vegas is not taking him. Utah, he's not going to really necessarily compete in Utah, but they have the most flexibility. So is this something that he may be open to exploring to benefit himself? I don't think he wants to spend his whole career kind of being on the cusp of greatness or winning. It's not even that competing. I do have to think there's those conversations, regardless of how loyal someone is to a team. I think it's always fair to assume that thought has come across their mind. I also have to wonder, because most of the players that he kind of came up with have been traded as well, or just no longer play with the Flames. Him and Mangiapane came up around the same time, pretty much. in terms of like the AHL, like they played together a lot there. Rasmus Andersson and Mangiapane bought a car in California together when they were playing in Stockton, and that was quite something. There's a story about that on YouTube, and like they had like $4,000 cash and bought a car. It, you know, Gio's gone, Hannafin's gone, obviously Chris Tanev, Elias Lindholm, Goodrow, Kachuk. Like, what is that, like a sign to try a greener pasture? You know, I do have to wonder if he's thought about it. I mean, we can talk about it all day on Twitter. We don't have anything else better to talk about, so why not talk about Rasmus Andersson potentially being traded? I don't know. And I do hope that this isn't something that like negatively impacts him. I mean, I'm sure he does not listen to random internet noise, but is it something that could potentially gain traction? Is this something that, if you start seeing beat writers write about, you start seeing Eric Francis talking about it, is this going to gain momentum the same way that the Markstrom trade gained momentum? And I look at them similarly because contract positions, age and remaining term. I mean, Rasmus Andersson is not 30 whatever, making $6 million, but he's inexpensive. If a team wants to boost their blue line, Rasmus Andersson is that guy. And coming up next, we're going to talk about what those teams could give the Flames in return for Rasmus Andersson, because he would be an excellent fit on most teams, especially ones that are looking to win. And we will be back right after this. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search. Match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that will help find you quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to boost your job's more visibility at Indeed.com/locked-on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around and hanging out with me today on Locked On Flames. I hope you are enjoying your summer and have enjoyed the last 4 months without Flames hockey, because it will be back very, very soon. When evaluating trades, I feel like I can never get it right. And that's why I would be a fantastic general manager, because I would just kind of go with my heart rather than what my scouting and capologist departments are telling me. No, but in all seriousness, I do think the Flames will listen to anything at this point. I don't necessarily think that means like, oh my God, they're going to trade everyone. Like, we constantly see Mackenzie Weegar's name, like, oh, Mackenzie Weegar to Ottawa, Mackenzie Weegar to Toronto. No, those are like, it's simply not happening. Mackenzie Weegar has made it clear that he wants to play in Calgary, play for Calgary, And I don't see a world where that's explored at this given moment. But what do you get for a player like Rasmus Andersson? I thought about Elias Lindholm and the haul that he got. Thank you, Vancouver. There might be teams, Vancouver was a team that was buying at the deadline because they wanted to make a true run for the cup. They did a pretty good job considering the state of the team in years past. And not even years past, but just like recent last 2 or 3 seasons. So if a team wants someone bad enough and they want to win and they believe that this player is going to push them over the edge to get them to that point, they'll do it. And I don't think that a general manager like Craig Conroy, or that's in a similar position in terms of looking to get younger and better, is going to, turn away phone calls like that. If you are looking down the stretch, like at the, a longer term picture rather than this immediate future, and we know that they're not playing for immediate fixing right now. Like they are not assembling a roster in the sense of we can go out there and make the playoffs. Well, they're saying that, but they're not operating like that. Because if they were operating like that, they wouldn't have traded their starting goalie. But I do think you have to look at it like that. You can't just look at the short-term picture because you're not looking, these guys that you're bringing in, the Matt Coronados, the Connor Zary, the Martin Pospisil's, the Dustin Wolfs, like they are great players, but you are not going to win a championship with them in June. Maybe if you're playing, what's that game? NHL 24, 25, shout out to the Hughes brothers, but that's not happening here. The Flames are not in a position like, Pittsburgh, where they can kind of move pieces around and trade for this guy and sign this guy to an entry-level contract because he'll impact the team immediately and long-term. Like, there's so many moving pieces already. And kind of, Pittsburgh is definitely in a position where they're teetering on that, are we rebuilding or are we just going to see how long we can stick this out? The fact that Crosby has not signed a contract extension should kind of, I don't know, makes you think. But at the same time, the Flames, you are looking to get younger. You're looking to be better down the road. This isn't going to be a one-stop shop. One off season is not going to fix you, because one off season did not get you here. Pushed you over the edge, but wasn't just one. And I think the bare minimum for Rasmus Andersson would be an NHL ready player that has team control and a first rounder. I think that, to me, that's the most realistic. I would say. I think that you need to get a player in return, a one that is going to be playing on your roster at the NHL level, because of the caliber of a player Rasmus Andersson is. If Elias Lindholm on a down year brings you Andrei Kuzmenko, who ultimately revived the power play, he breathed life back into that thing. I'm just saying, what does a competitive, highly skilled defenseman like a Rasmus Andersson bring you? What can you get? As I've mentioned a million times before, I am not good at evaluating. Like, I don't have the knowledge, the expertise. I mean, I have knowledge. Let's not go that far. But I don't have the expertise in trade maneuvering and execution to say that, Rasmus Andersson, would get you, I don't know, Trevor Zegras, this year's first round draft pick and next year's third. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I just pulled that out of left field, but I mean, okay. You're not going to get a player that is old, not going to do a cap dump, not going to do that. The Flames are going to want something of value. And that is going to be the draft capital, your draft picks, your young prospects that you can shift around the board. You're going to need leverage in future trades. And that's why you have the draft picks and all that fun stuff. And I understand why people want to trade Rasmus Andersson. A year ago, I would have said, we are not looking at this. We are not entertaining this. This is not anything we are even going to acknowledge here on Locked On Flames. But we have to. The Flames are in a very different position now than they were 9 months ago. This team is heading towards a long-term goal rather than this immediate fix that they have perpetually been in for really what seems like at least a decade. So, on to a brighter future. And first up is your new arena. There's probably something before that too. Because who knows? You could land like a top 3 draft pick, top 5 draft pick before those doors even open. I do not know. That would be something. But I know that the Flames are kind of projected to pick higher than they did this year at this year's draft. So that's good because there's obviously a top 10 draft pick is great, but if you can move up higher, that's even better. And that will do it for me here on today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. I hope you have enjoyed your week and your off season is going great. And you get as riled up as me when we discuss trading someone as important as Rasmus Andersson. And I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great night. Stay safe, stay warm, stay cool, stay dry, stay hydrated, and remember to be kind.